Yep.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight. Welcome to our budget engagement session on the 2022 budget. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Mike Morrison, the city manager, and to my right is Nick Bischoff, the finance director. Nick shortly will be going over a presentation on the 2022 budget. Approving a city budget and tax levy is one of the most important things the city council does every year. And what we're going to do, we have this scheduled for September to approve a preliminary levy, and Nick will go over that schedule with you. And we'll also go over what the next meeting is after September, which is usually a December meeting where we approve the final levy. As we all are aware, COVID-19 has hit us a year ago, and it's still with us this year. And last year, in order to reduce the impact on taxes, we did have some reductions in our capital improvement plan as well as our general fund operations to try to minimize the impact on taxes. What Nick will be sharing with you in a little bit is we have restored those. We, being the staff, has restored those cuts back into the budget. We presented this budget to the council in July, so they haven't seen it since then. I think most of them will, if they're not on Zoom, they will be on Zoom, as well as all of our staff members that aren't here right now are on Zoom if there's any specific questions about a specific department. So after tonight, because we're in a Zoom function and we're just trying to control how this is going to work, we handed out business cards, not business cards, for your questions. We're going to try to answer as many as we can. We may not have all the answers tonight. If we don't, we promise that we will put stuff on our webpage before Labor Day, and the council will also get that information. After tonight, the council will get another preliminary look at the levy on September 7th based on some feedback and input we received tonight. And we don't, just because people didn't show up, we can still get feedback after tonight too. So this is an ongoing process. With that, I think what I'm going to do is turn it over to Nick, because we have a brief presentation on where we are right now in the budget, and we'd rather have questions from the folks that are either in the audience or that are on Zoom. So go ahead, Nick.
All right. Thank you. Good evening. Yeah, I'm happy that everyone is here tonight to be part of this important discussion. Like Mike said, I'm going to have a brief overview of the budget cycle, where we are in the budget cycle, the city's general fund budget, and other operating tax levies and our debt levy. After my presentation, we'll have the question and answer session. So we can go to the first slide, please. So the city's budget process really goes from January through December of each year. During the months of January, February, and March of 2021, each of the city's departments gave an update to City Council, discussing their goals and objectives for 2021. And those are available on our website if you'd like to go back and look at them. The city manager also gave some updates on the city's mission and also objectives for 2021 and the backgrounds and strategies. And then most recently, the city council reviewed a draft version of our budget in July at their July work session. Tonight, highlighted in red, we're hosting a budget engagement session. We will pass a preliminary levy at one of our meetings in September. This levy can only be reduced or it can be kept the same after it's passed in September. We will hold a truth and taxation hearing on December 6th, and we will pass our final levy in December. The city council will discuss the budget and tax levy likely many more times than what's listed here, but these are the steps that have happened and the steps in the fall that do have to happen or are required to happen. We go to the next slide, please. The general fund is the primary operating fund of the city. It comprises about half of our budget. We are assuming two major things when we prepared this budget. We are restoring the same level of service experienced in 2019. We had changes due to COVID-19, as the city manager mentioned. So going back to 2019 is the last normal year we had, I'll call it. And it's also conservative, and we'll only put forth the necessary expenditures. Go to the next slide. Our 2022 general fund budget is about $16.2 million. That's just under a 3% increase from 2021, or about $460,000 increase from last year. We can move to the next slide, please. We have a tax levy in the general fund of increasing by about $450,000. It's about a 3.5% increase. All of our other revenue categories are budgeted conservatively and at less than the total increase in the general fund. So that is causing that tax levy increase to be higher than the total increase in the general fund. And I should note, we will have this presentation posted on our website later. The city's general fund budget collects about 80, we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Collects about 82% of its revenue from property taxes, which is consistent with prior years. Other revenues are intergovernmental revenue at about 9% of the total, which can be grants or other payments received from the state, licenses, permits, and fines at 5%, charges for services such as rental income at 2%, and other miscellaneous revenue at 2% of the total general fund budget. Moving on to the 2022 general fund expenditures, we're restoring some of the reductions we made in 2021, such as crack sealing, tree replanting, and pole painting. It also includes some reductions due to reorganizations. The 2022 general fund expenditures are over half for public safety, which includes the police and fire departments. 18% is for general government functions, which includes more inward facing departments like IT and finance. Public Works accounts for about 15%, and Parks and Rec the remaining 12% of the general fund's budget. The draft levy has 4 other operational levies. The first is $200,000 into our capital improvement fund. This fund supports capital improvements at City Hall, the police station, the fire hall, or the activity center, or the Public Works building based on needs during that year. Next, we have an art center levy, about $340,000. It would support the art center's operation and also helps pay back the deficit owed to the general fund that it currently owes to the general fund. The pavilion also has a $340,000 levy. It's used to support debt service payments for approximately $3.1 million of a 2018 upgrade and renovation project. We also received funding from Hopkins School District and Hopkins Youth Hockey for that project. We also have an equipment replacement levy of $250,000, support purchases for use in the general fund, mainly police, fire, and public works, are the departments with the major equipment purchases. Our 2022 debt levy, we're in the middle of a plan to reconstruct all the streets within the city, paid for with debt, special assessments, and also utility charges. We're on track to complete reconstruction of all our city streets by 2030. We've also made some sizable investments that allow us to take full advantage of Southwest Light Rail. Those are 8th Avenue Artery projects and Blake Road projects. When we look at our debt in total, we have approximately $83.5 million of debt. About 70% of that debt is supported in some way by the tax levy. And looking at our debt paid for a tax levy, it's about $58.6 million. 71% is for roads, 9% for parks or parking lots or parking facilities, 18% for city facilities, and then 2% for equipment certificates. The total debt levy in 2022 right now is proposed at just over $4 million. That's about a 2% decrease from 2021, and it comprises about 22% of the total levy. This is just a slide of the city's total tax levy that was proposed by staff in July. The total levy is about $18.4 million. That's about a $625,000 increase, or a 3.5% increase from 2021. Your property tax bill is not just what you pay to the city of Hopkins. If you live in a median value home right now, you pay 43% of your taxes to the city. Another 27% would go to the Hopkins School District, and almost 25% would go to Hennepin County. Between 2021 and 2022, we're projecting a 5% increase to the city's tax capacity. This proposal is including a 3.5% increase to the tax levy. And this is actually causing the tax rate to decrease by 0.6%. This would help to reduce the impact on the homeowner, but it's still, you would still likely see increases. And then just looking at taxes to the median value home. We have done this for the last several years to kind of try to show what each decision means to the average resident. For the 2022 tax year, the median value home is valued at $315,000. That home would pay $2,009 in taxes to the city, which is about $167 per month, or an increase of about $155 from 2021. And then just looking at what your monthly bill for city services would be like, we can go to the next slide, thank you. The two biggest costs are public safety at $62 a month, debt service payments about $42 a month. Then you pay about $23 for general government, about $19 for public works, $11 for parks and recreations, and then $3 each for the pavilion, the activity center, and the arts center. So kind of our next steps with the budget. This is a draft. We're going to be adopting a preliminary budget and tax levy in September. That will be the maximum levy that we can levy in December, and we can reduce it or keep it the same between September and December. We're holding a truth and taxation hearing on December 6th, and we're required to finalize our budget by the end of December. That is all I have. I will go into a couple of questions that I think people may be curious about. Yeah, thank you. So I have a few here. Are we ready for light rail to come to town? I don't know if we are, but I think from an infrastructure standpoint, we are. We've made some good investments to 8th Avenue Artery and to also Blake Road that help prepare the city to really benefit from the light rail. Why doesn't the city focus on paying off debt rather than increasing taxes? We're prioritizing completing needed infrastructure projects, which require the issuance of debt. You know, in the past 5 years, we've done some really important projects, Avenues West, Park Valley, Peaceful Valley, 8th Avenue Artery, Northeast Hopkins, Blake Road, Cambridge Street, Hiawatha, Lake Street, and Interlochen Park. And those really prepare the city to be successful in the future.
You are on camera.
Okay.
For some reason that screen turned off, but there's nothing left of the presentation anyway. Are you still have questions you're answering?
No, I'm not gonna.
Those kind of
Okay.
similar.
Sure.
We probably will be able to answer some of those, but not. Won't be able to follow.
I had two questions kind of concerning our level of debt, how we plan to pay it off over the year. You know, we have increased our debt over the past several years. The debt levy is actually increasing this year in 2022. And so we do have debt coming off the books. As far as a detailed schedule, I think I have to put something together for a detailed schedule of what our debt service looks like in the upcoming years. You know, we do have a plan to pay that down, and I believe it's payable with you know, a reasonable tax levy in the future, but I need to put something together on our website later for that.
If I may, I think the kind of the spirit of the question gets lost if you don't read the question. And I would appreciate it if you read the actual question that I raised and see if it covered both questions that.
Sure. I'm not against the debt. I've had a mortgage for years, but I'm terribly concerned about the level of debt. 88 million. It's increased 8 million in the last year alone. Where on the website can one find a detailed explanation for how that level of debt has accrued, and at least as importantly, how the debt will be serviced? Will it continue to go up each year?
I mean, as a resident, what I really want to know, may I speak? Is that okay?
Sure.
Is that coming off though on the?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's not gonna necessarily hear you, Harlan, unless you go up there and like,
I don't mind coming up here. if I
you wanna
may.
just press that gray button? I'm not sure if it's on right now.
So,
Okay.
it is on. My name is Harlan Limpert. I live at 925 9 Mile Cove South. And my question in writing form suggested, I'm not against debt, but what has been frustrating to me as a resident of Hopkins is not understanding the rationale or the reasoning behind the level of debt that has been accrued over recent years. I hear generalities about how we want to build up the infrastructure and so on, and therefore we'll spend money and we'll take care of it in the future. But that's really vague. I would like to know, what your philosophy is of going into debt for the various projects that you've supported through the debt, and more specifics about how you're going to address that debt. It just doesn't, it just seems hidden to me. And I'd really like a better explanation, and probably an explanation that's more thorough than you can give tonight. I would like to be able to go to the website and see a substantial document of a certain length, whatever that length might be, that really underlines your philosophy of going into debt that much.
Thanks for the question.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to be able to address that tonight. But thank you for your comment. And
Will you commit to preparing a document that can be made available to residents that can be posted on the website?
Well, Harlan, we're planning on answering all the questions that we receive here tonight in one big document that we'll post online. So we'll try to address that in that summary of all the engagement we received and the questions that we have. So I think, yes, I think that's already was our plan. I don't think you're going to be able to answer this one.
okay.
But
Well, I guess these ones here first, but
Thanks, Ben.
how is Hopkins utilizing the COVID funding cities received? Well, we are set to receive about 1.95 million of ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan Act funds. And we don't currently have a plan for it. There is a provision where we can use it for lost revenue that the city's experienced. And that's been a staff recommendation at this point, but we haven't had a full conversation with our city council on where they'd like that to be used. We have until 2024, I guess, more in general, other organizations that make recommendations on this sort of thing are recommending to make sure you really take time and think about where you should spend it. It's different from CARES. CARES, we had to spend it by the time we got notice from the legislator. We really only had a few months to spend it, and we really felt like we had to make a decision almost in weeks to be ordered to get that money out of the door. So we're taking a slower approach to that. And so I can't really say where exactly we plan on spending that. I don't know, Mike, you have a comment on that?
Well, we're still looking at the rules that the federal government's laying out, and we're going to come back to the council with some recommendations. And we obviously had lost revenue at the Art Center, the ice arena, and the activity center, and we want to replenish that. We also cut. Staff did a really good job of reducing, and we laid off quite a few employees. So, but I think that's number one. And then number two, we want to see what the council wants to do. We haven't even engaged the city council on this yet, because we're focused on getting the budget done. And we're pretty much been spending a lot of time on, we've got two big development projects going on in the Blake Road, Excelsior area right now. That's taking a lot of our time, as well as the movie theater, as everybody's aware of. So, I mean, but stay tuned. I think probably October, November, we plan to come back with the COVID money. So
Where's the 5% increase in tax capacity expected to come from? Well, our 2022 tax levy will be based on valuation from January 2nd, 2021. And the biggest increase was to residential. And then commercial and industrial increased as well, just not as a big of a rate. And I'll be able to put some actual specifics to that on the website.
Just so I understand, so essentially it's increasing property value.
Correct, correct. Yes, yep. So tax capacity is your property value times your property tax rate, which is different for a house or a commercial or an apartment. And yeah, but you're right, it's basically increase in property values.
It could also be increase of like if there's a new apartment building that came in that was bringing value in. So it's not necessarily just like one home increasing. It could also be more properties coming into the community.
Or it could be a tax increment district that came off,
Yes,
came back to us.
yes.
So that's what I was curious.
Yeah. I got one that I'll just read real quick, Nick. I don't think you're gonna be able to answer this one today, but maybe you can then think about your next
Well,
answer.
Nick's got more questions here. He hasn't gotten through yet. If
I-
you want to wait for him,
I know that. I just figured if you wanted a second to think.
Okay,
he needs more than a second.
go for it.
So this one says, a survey commissioned by the Met Council just this week said that 1/3 of the 800 riders it surveyed on light rail did not feel safe. In order for this to be successful for the people need to ride it. How will we as a city pay for the additional safety measures clearly needed to bring people here? Will we be raising taxes? If so, how much? Do we and our businesses have to pay for some of this? If so, how much? And then it says CSOs. So I'll just quickly say that as of today, we're not expecting that the light rail will be open for a couple years, probably a little bit longer. We don't even really have an open date. And so that is a question council has said recently that they want to have some conversations about what those public safety needs are and what we're looking at. We're also expecting a lot of increased value and redevelopment that's perpetuated by the light rail, which will hopefully help to offset some of that. So it's hopefully it won't end up being something that would have more revenue coming in from new development that would help to subsidize some of those safety measures, but we don't really have a good answer for that right now.
The city seemed to function fine after the budget cuts last year. Provided we are still in a pandemic, why have those cuts been restored? Why not even keep the cuts permanent to give homeowners some tax relief? I think at least the cuts that I outlined were maintenance of assets. And so I don't believe you would really have noticed a difference, but I think there is concern that ongoing, we do need to maintain our assets. And so those were chosen to be put back into the budget for 2022. Have you run current cost recovery models for inspection services like rental licensing or fire inspections in comparison to other metro area cities? I have not personally, but we have at our last work session discussed our fee schedule and updating that going forward. So that is something that is we're in the process of doing.
You know, we also have reduced our inspection department. We used to have 2 full-time inspectors here. We're now transferring that to the fire department. And we're going to add another firefighter. So we're actually going to be down, once this all gets done, we'll be down 1 employee. And we're going to actually provide more protection for medical calls because there'll be an additional firefighter on. Ari, who's in charge of the Art Center and Activity Center, there used to be separate directors for those centers. We now have 1 director. So those are going to stay in place. I'm not saying they'll stay in place permanently, because if the Art Center and Activity Center pick up users and participants, you know, it's going to require more staff, but we'll also hopefully be offset by revenue. So those are staying. We're not restoring those staff positions. And Steve Stadler to the right over here is a longtime Public Works Director who will be retiring this fall, along with his Public Works Supervisor, Jace Strakota. Between them, they have 50 years. we're going to be reorganizing that department, which we think will make the department, not that it wasn't efficient under him, but we're going to have some staff reduction there too, and do some transfers and do some restructuring. So we're always looking at doing those things to keep the costs down. Sometimes those things don't really have that big of an impact on the levy, except for it doesn't make the levy maybe go as high too. So we look at that stuff anytime there's changes within the organization. So those things should be always ongoing.
I know I don't have a response for this, but I'll read it for the record to address that this came in through Zoom. So that person knows that we did receive it. How do you model revenue around TIF projects to ensure there's sufficient revenue for increased demand before the parcel's full value comes on the books? So we'll answer that on our website. Anything else coming through Zoom?
That is all that we have currently in Zoom. Maybe we'll give people another second if they have another question.
Or does the audience have any other questions that came to mind?
They're all very engaged.
Nice
Can I just go to the mic?
Sure.
Go for it. Yep.
Hi, Gerard Bound, 245 18th Avenue North. So I also noticed that there's just simply not a large number of people here or involved. And I was wondering if you could answer either now or probably on the website, maybe some ideas you have what we can do to engage the community more, to have them pay attention to these type of sessions and to participate.
Yeah, that's always a tough one. I mean, I don't know if budgets excite too many people, and it's a nice night tonight. So, overall, I think our city does a really good job of engaging the public with stuff, with development, with our fire department open house, with our police department going to the schools. But keep in mind, this is our second year of doing this. So we're learning. The first year, we're obviously in a full pandemic, and we had to do it all Zoom last year. So hopefully, I'm hoping that the pandemic probably kept some people away, but year round, people have the opportunity to provide feedback to the 5 elected officials, because they're the ones that really make the decision on the budget, or us staff. So something we can think about as far as trying to get more people involved. I think that's a good point. So.
Yep, I think one of the things we talked about, I don't know if it would have helped or not, is where to hold this meeting. Some people, I think we acknowledge that some people may not feel comfortable to coming to Hopkins City Hall and sitting in the council chambers, but this was the room that we had set up to do Zoom. And we also thought people might not be comfortable coming in person. We do have people on the line. So, and we set this up several months ago. We set this up, I think we set this up before the CDC said, release their mask, we don't have to wear masks anymore. So, so we just didn't know. But hopefully if the pandemic is different, hopefully there's an opportunity to meet maybe in different places that are more inviting. And I know the people in attendance have been in this room before, but there may be other people that have not, so.
And I would say part of it being a year-round process too, it also gives people opportunity to comment and to participate in the process throughout the whole year, instead of it just being like, hey, we only receive comment on September 7th at our preliminary levy in December 6th. It's we're always open, and hopefully we'll be able to plan more events where we can get out, like Raspberry Festival, where we can actually be present in the community, because I think that's the best way to be able to get input. I did get one more question from online. This is not one you're going to be able to answer, but hopefully we'll be able to answer this question for you. What's the history behind fire departments covering medicals, since they're such a large share of their work, despite the name of fire? So that's probably one that Nick's not the right person to answer, but we will make sure it gets answered.
Harlan Limpert again. I want to make it clear that I have a lot of regard for the difficulty in running a city like this, and the challenge in putting together a budget that makes sense. As a former chief operating officer for a nonprofit organization, I was on the other side of the table, fielding questions about how we spent our money, how we raised our money, how we what our strategy was for spending the money that we were given. effectively. So I have a lot of respect for what position that you're in. I would ask that when you respond to these questions in writing, that you really try to explain as thoroughly and carefully as you can, kind of the philosophy behind the decisions that you're making, not just the decisions you're making, but the thinking behind them. So if you were to come back to us residents and say that we really believe in our number crunching shows that if we can perform certain improvements and enhancements to the quality of the infrastructure of our city and the appearance of our city in this way and that way, we believe that it'll increase the value of all the homes by X number of percent or X number of dollars. And that over a period of time, that increased revenue from the homeowner properties will help us address the debt. That's going to make me feel a whole lot better about the decisions that are being made, and especially about debt and tax increases. But the general responses have not given me much comfort, and I think there's an awful lot of people in Hopkins that are not comfortable with more vague responses that we've been getting. So that would be my request to you, that you be more thorough and complete in your explanation of your rationale and reasoning behind these debt numbers and the tax increase numbers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more? I don't know.
That's all we have right now.
Give you guys one more opportunity.
Well, and I mean, I think it's important to recognize like that people are coming out and this process is actually intended to try to engage more people. So I think I actually applaud you guys for showing up here tonight. I know this is probably not your preferred thing to do on a beautiful Monday night, but and the people that are present online too. I think that helps us build a stronger community, because we don't know as staff and even as a council sometimes what are the things that the community isn't truly understanding, and us being able to respond and provide that more in-depth analysis is a good feedback for us.
All right. With that, that's a good note to end on, and I think we'll wrap this up, and appreciate all the feedback and appreciate, some of the specific, how you want us to be a little more thorough with the responses, which we can do. Sometimes I tell the staff, your staff reports are too long. After 5 pages, they're not going to read them. So keep it short, but maybe we need to do a larger explanation on the debt, because the $80 million is a lot of debt. We never said it wasn't a lot of debt, but our whole philosophy on debt is if we invest in infrastructure, commercial development will occur, and therefore we'll get value. We just probably didn't articulate that in words, and maybe we need to do that. And we also had a philosophy of starting in 2013 when Gene Maxwell was our mayor. We adopted the financial management plan, which we haven't really followed. We wanted to keep the increases to $100 per average homeowner. That included the general fund and the debt. Well, things occurred that shot it over 100 a couple times. Shady Oak Road needed to be done, which was a project with Minnetonka and Hennepin County. Blake Road needed to be done, which was a project with Hennepin County and us. The presidential streets was a big area. Interlocking is $8 million. And so a lot, and I'm not using that as excuses, but we also got money for the artery that was sitting out there for $3 million that if we don't take it, we can't do. I can't remember what the numbers were, a $5 million artery. So we kind of were, I don't want to say we were forced by other agencies to spend the money, but we were kind of forced by other agencies to spend the money. And if we were going to do the project anyway, why not take the money now and reduce the costs for future years? I've been here 10 years, and I will say this, we've tackled some really large projects in the last 10 years, and we don't have that many left. We still have 8 or 9 years of streets to do, but we don't have any really large major infrastructure projects. We got some light rail stuff we got to deal with, but we're going to be dealing with that, with the council, and hopefully that'll be paid for with some TIF stuff if there's development in the area. But a lot of the big projects are taken care of. I know we've got Hopkins Crossroads, 17th Avenue, that is sometime down the road. We got another large residential area, but other than that, we've taken a lot off. So that's the good news. And maybe we can share that story when we put a report together so everybody can see where we are on some of these things.
That would help.
Can I ask one last question, actually?
Sure.
Draw bound 245 18th Avenue North. My understanding is that there are some things that are coming off TIF in the next couple of years. And so if you could either answer now or on the website later, what's coming off of TIF and what will that mean for the revenue coming in for the city?
Good question. That's one we should be able to answer, and
We should, yep,
Yeah.
I have a TIF report and I will put it out on the.
That would
website.
probably be one better, just visually see all of those items versus him trying to explain it off the top of his head.
Yep.
Thanks for coming out.
Yep,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you all.